Hey y'all, it's Grant Fletcher, and yes, it is time for another episode of the 69-minute eargasm with the quintessential stud muffin, Joel Gertner. Joel, how are you, brother? It's been a while.
I am doing, as always, well, meow, and we're back. The ever-returning 69-minute eargasm. How can you miss us if we don't simply take a short moment and fuck off for a while? And that's what we did, and we are back.
We back, baby. Yeah, you're right. You know, it's been a minute, and we said, you know what? The Eargasm Army has been waiting long enough with bated breath on standby. We should give them a little something, right?
You said, and then you showed me the numbers.
I did. Look, here's the thing. We were talking about this earlier. I don't know if I gave you the official word on it, but our most recent episode before this one was the legendary Diamond Dallas Page. If you haven't checked that out yet, be sure to do so. But as of today, Joel, as of this recording right now, that has become our most downloaded episode ever. And it's because of our listeners, because you all jumped on, you wanted to hear what was going on there, and we thank you for it. We thank you for showing up.
Thank you all. And yeah, by definition, mathematically, I mean, our previous number one episode had been number one for at least a couple of years, maybe longer than that, maybe more like 3 years, maybe to around COVID. I could be a little bit off with the timing, but our previous number one had been number one with some staying power. So the fact that that one that we've done in the last year or so has gone ahead and kind of supplanted it and taken that number one spot, by definition means that even during these last few months, while we haven't had a new episode and been on hiatus, people still and currently and regularly are listening. And that means that there are even more great announcements to make, but because you are the handler and the holder, and really when it comes to the big announcement, you're kind of like the captain of it. Like, you've kind of got me in the Janetti spot where you're really the one that is finally making it happen. I mean, I've talked with Steve Kaufman about it in the past, and we're all going to put our heads together and figure out, but you're really the one that kind of, before I get any more into it, because I'd be a hypocrite, because this is your announcement to make, and I'd be super stoked if you went ahead and let people know about this exciting new platform, this venue that we'll be on, and this brand new way that people can ingest and consume their eargasm.
So what I think you're referring to is the fact that as of right now, the show is available not only on your favorite podcast app, unless it's Stitcher, because Stitcher went away in the time we were away, but we're also on YouTube as well. So if you prefer to listen on YouTube, we're up there. We got this episode up there right now. If you're listening on YouTube right now, thank you very much. Also, we are going to be filling in our back catalog onto YouTube at a pretty fair clip there. You're going to see, a couple few episodes a week drop in there. So if you're listening on YouTube right now and you've only just now discovered us via YouTube, or if you'd rather listen on YouTube just in general, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so that you'll know when the older episodes are dropping in, because we have got conversations with legends, with people like we said, like Diamond Dallas Page. We've got some from a little more recent years, but people that you know very well, like D'Lo Brown. We have current WWE superstars that have been on the show, like Sarah Rowe or Sarah Logan, depending upon what timeline we're in. Also, Karrion Kross, a.k.a. Killer Kross, has been on the show. It's been a really good time. We've been having a lot of fun with it. So those will be up there on the YouTube channel in very short order.
The interviews are super thorough, but they're super casual, but they're super heartfelt. They're super thoughtful. The interviews, you glean so much from listening to them. Just in general, it's such a diverse, such a varied, such an eclectic. It's as close to a variety show, just like wrestling is, as any podcast, any wrestling podcast, I think is ever going to get. I mean, you and me don't do a ton of spiel. We do some. But I mean, we've had comedians on, we've had interstitials of various wrestlers doing comedy, we've had the Grapplex ads, and those unfortunately aren't comedy. But when you listen to those, our friend Mr. Dacron, who is still in a Turkish prison, and we wish him well. But when you listen to all of the different stuff, I did an audio video instead of it, or a music audio. Instead of it being a music video like MTV, because you can't see it, it's a music audio where we took a Pat Benatar song, Invincible, and we mashed it up with audio from a Cody Rhodes, the original pre-AEW when they did their first show 5 years ago. We took audio from the press conference. I think it was that, unless it was the AEW launch. But this goes back 3 years ago at least, maybe closer to 5 years ago. We took a Cody Rhodes press conference excerpt and we mashed it up with Invincible. So we've done some crazy stuff, some fun stuff, some innovative stuff on this podcast. We might even go back and throw some old ones up that are pre-Grant. And that version of the podcast is a little bit different than this version. So if you're a fan of this podcast and everything it brings to the table, the John Pantozzi history segments and just everything, then we really do welcome you to not just re-listen to the ones that you've heard already and already enjoyed, but the ones that you haven't heard yet. And you can do that, like Grant said, as a podcast everywhere that we've been but Stitcher. But you can also now do it, I believe, full episode and shorts. But again, that's the details that Grant can let you in on. But you can find us and hear us and maybe even to an extent see us on YouTube. And that's going to keep rolling out. That's going to develop maybe even faster and better than Threads, depending on how much free time Grant has. But yeah, man, I'm super excited, and I think that the second half of 2023 is going to be obviously quantity and quality so much better than the first half for the 69-minute Eargasm, and I think 2023 is really, really going to be the year that puts this podcast on the map with some of the top 5 or 10 others, and gets us noticed and gets us recognized. And as much as I always love to eat up Grant and just heat him up and just really kind of be all over him, and most of that's for fun. But today, really, kudos to him, because he's been behind the scenes doing the work, keeping me motivated, keeping things on pace and on point. And again, just congratulations, and I'm up for it, man. I'm ready. I'm hyped, and let's kill it.
Well, Joel, I appreciate you putting me over. And, we got to put over Joel, too, because as you know, if you've been listening or if this is your first episode here, you're going to see that Joel has a way of getting things out of people that I don't think you get in a lot of other interviews. But yeah, to your point, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be posting the full episodes. We'll be posting some clips that are just a few minutes long. So if you just want a little snack, maybe not a whole thing, or like you said, some shorts, if you're just looking for a little bite-sized morsel, if you will. We're going to have a whole variety. The whole buffet will be available over on the YouTube channel as well. So I'm really excited about it. I'm pumped. And just thanks for joining us on this journey. Now, here's the thing, though, Joel. You spent all that time putting me over. I feel bad. I have a confession to make.
All right, here we go.
Well, it's all right, I'm just going to have to come out and say it.
And dude, we love you, and it doesn't matter, and you've got a beautiful family, and none of it matters, and just be who you are.
So, all right, here's the deal. I do have another podcast. That is the thing.
Wait, what?
Listen, Joel, it's not you, it's me.
You're on the 69-minute Eargasm with what? With who?
No, of course not.
Can be bigger. What podcast can be better than a 69-minute Eargasm?
I will not be putting any left effort into the Eargasm. No. Look, so for a couple years now, I've been working with a company that puts on Comic-Cons and anime conventions and maybe one day wrestling conventions. Who knows? And so we've launched a podcast around that. Me and a couple folks from the company, we get together once a week and just kind of talk about life in the convention industry. tell some celebrity stories and some embarrassing moments and just kind of cool little things that we find as we go from town to town. It's called The Humble Show, spelled HUMBL3, the number 3 show. And that's all over the place. It's on YouTube too. We've been having fun with it. But yeah, that is the deal. I kind of feel like, Joel, that you should be on at some point in time, though.
I would listen. I mean, there was a time where I thought I was going to go into sports business. There was a time where I thought I was going to go into agency or just working for a franchise or something like that.
Yeah.
There was a brief point in time in college where I was kind of, not just into wrestling and the wrestling business, but also into sports and sports business. And I've also been into the amusement business. There used to be a trade publication called Amusement Business for like circuses, carnivals, but also concert promoting. So that's kind of entertainment business. It would be kind of like Box Office Mojo, but instead of for movies, for like live entertainment. So I've been into sports business. I've been into amusement business. So the fact that you have this show that talks about conventions and convention life, I don't know whether to be jealous or whether to be thrilled and excited for you. And yeah, man, don't threaten me with a good time. I'd love to be a guest on there.
All right, well, I've never heard of this, but are you telling me that you have copies of Amusement Business mixed in with all the VHS tapes and the After Mags and everything else you have stored away there?
I'd have to check. Dude, I haven't seen a copy. I went looking for a copy of Amusement Business about 6 months ago online. I think they don't make it anymore. I think it's out of print. I think they've discontinued it. As far as old issues, even if it's 1 or 2, I hope I do have some. I know I have some newsletters about sports business. At the very least, I have this book, almost like a phone book. It's like pre-World Wide Web. And it's this like soft cover, this paperback book. And it's called like the Sports Marketplace Register or whatever. And like in there was like the front office numbers and the back office numbers for like all of the major league franchises, all of the magazines, anything that had to do with sports. It had all of the contact information. But the same people that got me that, I used to get a newsletter from them. I'd like to think I have some of those and some amusement businesses from the 80s or 90s or the 2000s put away. But yeah, man, I don't know. I hope so. Now you have me wanting to go look for them.
Talk about a time capsule. I wonder, man, there's this newsstand here in town. It's tucked away. It's not on the main drag. It's in the shopping center, but like the very back of the shopping center. And it's not a well-trafficked area, but it's been there for decades and decades. And every time I just happen to be in the area and pass by it, I look at it and I go, that's got to be a front for something. Like they've got to be laundering money out of the newsstand. There's no way they're just open because that many people are going in there.
I mean, we used to have in the city, we used to have one called Hodlings, and we used to have, I don't think, because I know Universal News is still around, so it could have been an earlier iteration of Universal News. But think Universal News, and there was one kind of like mini chain like that, and there was also just this one place called Hodlings. And long story short, I mean, into the 90s, and you figure the World Wide Web really hits in like 95, maybe even up until about the year 2000 or so. Hodlings and other places, you'd walk in and if you liked magazines, you'd feel like literally a kid in a candy store because you'd walk in and this place would have like 6,000 titles. Like if you wanted like 50, 75 wrestling magazines from all around the world, there were 50, 75 wrestling magazines. If you wanted something about just sports business, they had it. If you wanted amusement business, they had it. Like this place had everything. And part of me wishes that even though we had access to the internet now, part of me wishes that places like that still existed. Because that was the kind of place where if you needed to kill an hour or two waiting for somebody, waiting out the rain to stop or anything else, whether you're buying or not buying, that's the kind of place where you really could go and kind of, seek shelter and have refuge and just, let your mind kind of like just grow for an hour or two.
I think places like that can exist, but they have to be kind of built around like an experience. You know what I mean? Like there's a place here in town. It's a record store, but in the front they have like a small concert venue. So you go there for a show, a band comes through or a local band plays a show, and then, and by the way, there just happens to be a record shop in the back, and you can go browse the records in between the bands or whatever you want to do.
That's a real.
I think that's where those kind of things, and they have like video store type things now that pop up in places, mostly on the West Coast, but they kind of make it more like an experience.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like fun.
I think so. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Just like going to a comedy show is a lot of fun.
Going to a comedy show can be a really great time. So we were talking before. We've had some wrestlers. We've had RJ City. We've had Ethan HD doing some comedy on the show. We've had some comedy segments, and we like to have a lot of fun. And we obviously like to make people laugh, whether it's you and me, whether it's these interstitials, the comedians that we have on, or anything else we do. And we've had a few comedians on it, and some of them are, I think maybe all of them, most of them are wrestling related. We've had Taylor Williamson on, who's been at Starrcast. We've had,
Trevor Wilson, big one as well. He's Squirrely Dan on Letterkenny, but also has a stand-up comedy career.
Yeah.
I worked with one of his co-stars, Tyler Johnston. I don't know if you ever watched Letterkenny, but he plays Stuart, who's like the leader of the Skids, who are like the the methed out kids in the small town, basically.
Yeah, so we've had a few comedians on, and comedians are kind of, every comedian, I think, if they would have wanted to, might have become a wrestling manager. And every super funny wrestling manager, I think if they had never watched wrestling or just whatever, if they had made, the pivot or just the decision career-wise, journey-wise, I think every super funny wrestling manager maybe could have been a stand-up comic. And sometimes it's interesting what makes somebody zig the one way instead of zag the other way. And that's something that we go into with our guest today.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of really good conversation about that, about just doing stand-up comedy, about wrestling, and where the two intersect as well. And then on top of that, we've got a bonus guest on this episode too, so stick around after the first interview. Not that you leave, because you always stick around for the John Pantozzi segment anyway, which is amazing. But there's this episode is stacked.
Yeah, and it goes over 69 minutes, and for that, we apologize, but for that, we are proud. And for you guys sticking in and hanging in and listening to it and enjoying it, once again, full circle, as we said at the beginning of this intro, we thank you so much.
Well, Joel, I think you put a bow on this whole conversation perfectly there. The only thing that's left is to go ahead and throw to the first guest. Folks, this guest here is a no-joke, I was going to say serious comedian, but I don't think you can say serious comedian out there, but a big-time player in the world of stand-up comedy and the stand-up of TV writing as well. He's been on Comedy Central. He's been all over the country. Y'all, make sure you are subscribed to this show so you never miss an episode. Make sure you're following us on all your social media platforms, that being both the 69-Minute Eargasm and Joel and I ourselves, because he's Joel Gertner, I'm Grant Fletcher, and this is Dan St. Germain.
As a matter of fact, though, let's not keep it buttoned up. Let's not do that. Let's do, well. It's only the world's funniest here on the Eargasm. This time on the Eargasm, you'll be surprised that we've got a guest of such thrill repute. We've got a gentleman who is a writer, a comedian, and an actor who has appeared on This Is Not Happening, Conan, Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. He has appeared in your mom's married friend's bedroom, and your mom tells no one. He has appeared on HBO. He has appeared on Fox. He is always the first Halloween costume to go, sold out off the shelves at Spirit of Halloween, usually the November prior. He's been on Comedy Central, and this summer you're going to see him at the Funny Bone and the Cellar Door and all over most of at least the eastern
part of America. He is the one and the only. Thank God for that. Dan St. Germain. Dan, how are you?
I'm good. That was so complimentary that by the end I thought it was a rib. I was like, all right, that was too much. But I like thrill repute. Can I use that in my normal day life?
Yeah, man, for sure.
Love that.
Sure. Oh, yeah, dude. I mean, my character was Seaman Spill Repute, you know what I mean? But you can do so, and he really wasn't until I just thought of it, right? You can, as I popped myself, I stepped on one of those bubbly air things that they send you when they mail you an Amazon package. So that was a literal pop right there. Thank God.
There you go, buddy.
How are you, sir?
You're getting pops.
Apparently.
I'm all right, man. I'm actually nursing a foot injury right now, so you can let your audience know this. And as I'm talking to you, I am walking my dog because we can do this over phone in this brave new world.
What kind of dog?
It is a half Chihuahua, half Whippet named Goldie, and she is.
She's a boy.
It's a girl. She's the love of my life. So.
What's a Whippet? Like an Airedale or a Greyhound, or more like just a Whippet?
It's like a smaller Greyhound, a little meatier, you know,
right?
but not like dashing meatier.
But with your foot injury, it's too fast for you right now.
What?
With your foot injury, is she too fast for you right now?
She's scared most of the time. So she actually, for a dog, that she can run really fast when she wants to. She's got a lot of anxiety, so she doesn't really like walking around New York City, you know. I'm we're in Queens, and so it's not even that crazy here. We're in Sunnyside. But,
nice. Home of the former Sunnyside Gardens.
Where are you? Queens?
Bay Ridge, Brooklyn.
Bay Ridge. Okay. Well, I mean, it's actually very similar.
Apartment before. I don't know if you were in Queens. I don't remember where you were at the time you were here.
We were in. I think you came over. It was East Village when we were there.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but yeah, man, we're gonna talk some fucking wrestling, huh? Can I curse on this?
What's that?
Can I curse on this one?
Yeah, man. Yes. It's a time minute.
Yeah, tits, ass, fuck, dick, shit. All right, let's do this.
You'd be in the wrong place if you didn't. Dan, let me ask you, man. We are going to talk about wrestling because every conversation, whether it's the whole hours about wrestling or whether that's where it starts, it's always where it starts. Because whether I've got a wrestler on, wrestling personality, whether I've got a stand-up comedian, whoever I've got a musician, they're into wrestling and they've got their personal history and their journey with wrestling. You know, what's the first product they watched on TV? What was the first house show they saw live? That kind of thing. And that's what I'm interested in with you. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Rutherford, New Jersey. So I was right outside the Giants Stadium and the Continental Airlines Arena, as it was called then.
Oh, what? You're young?
What?
I was about to say you might be younger than me because when I went to my first shows and my first concerts there, it was the Brendan Byrne Arena at the Meadowlands.
Yeah, I am. I'm 39. How old are you? If you don't want to say it, it's fine.
I'm 47.
Oh yeah, you got a couple on me. That's right. I think once after 35, it's all downhill.
Yeah, yeah, we're both on the same trajectory for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
for sure. For sure.
Okay. From Rutherford, New Jersey. That's cool.
Yeah.
Good buddy of mine that I started out in the business in '92, Crowbar, Dangerous Devon Storm. He's from Rutherford, New Jersey.
Okay.
There.
Yeah, my first show ever. I mean, I saw a VFW hall, which I don't even think had I don't even think it had like a fake doink or like Jimmy Snook on it. Like it was even it was like a level below that. But my first real show was I was at the WrestleMania 10 Revenge tour where it was like Brad and Owen headlining. And I had such a blast because, you know, at the time, this was 93, 94, and you got usually every Raw, you got one good match, an okay match, and then just a bunch of squashes and promos. And Superstars, it was one okay match and a bunch of squashes. Yeah. So I remember when I got Jeff Jarrett versus Diesel, I'm like, holy shit, this is like a pay-per-view match, you know? And now, you know, we get this shit, you know, I just remember one time on Raw, they casually had The Fiend and Kevin Owens go against each other for the first time. And then they never followed it up. And I'm like, this is so much different now than it used to be. So this could be a whole program, you know? But
they're fucking 5 pay-per-views on a week, basically. I mean, if you want to look at it that way, I mean, they've kind of killed the town in that way. Like now they've got to kind of put 2-3 hours out there and give it their all the time.
Yeah, it's insane. It's absolutely insane how much wrestling there is now. It's too much in a lot of ways. So? Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I mean, look, you really have to like make to really stand out as far as your match now. Like it's like that FTR and Bullet Club match was like phenomenal, but like that's how high the quality would be now. It can't even. I saw the G1. I don't even remember the G1 matches because of that show, and there were like 5 G1 matches I enjoyed. So it's just a different time. Or you can just be good at promos because like there's only like 10 good promos anymore. 10 guys that are good at promos. Like that seems to be the more lost of the art.
Did you ever think about getting into it as a talker, as like a manager type, or did you always want to do stand-up comedy instead?
I mean, let's be honest, man. There's not like a lot of money to be made if you're a manager in the wrestling business. And, like all these wrestling, like every time I would hear about a wrestling manager, it would be like, Paul Moody or Jimmy Hart. And they were also like doing the organization and booking for these big guys, So it was like, it kind of sounds like a hell gig in some ways. Would I do it now, like on an independent basis? Like, sure. I was actually thinking about going to wrestling school, but I screwed my foot up going up a flight of stairs for a bed frame. I can't imagine, what it'd be like to take bumps at 39 years old. I think, that ship has sailed. But I'm like, I did Greco-Roman wrestling in high school. But I'm like, I should have started that in my 20s. So I never really.
I was about to say, I mean, the bumps that I took when I was 23 or 24, and you don't take those because when you're 46 or 47, a generation later, that's when you feel them.
So you feel them now, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it just seems like it's, like I felt that ring, I just went to Raw and I took some pictures in front of the ring because we knew some people, but I just put my hands, on the ring. I didn't even get inside. And I was like, this is not, WWE is a softer style than AEW and New Japan, and this is still kind of a nightmare,
The ring is nice and firm. Yeah, the style kind of, in a way, depends how you measure it. Maybe it's a softer style, but yes, the ring is nice and yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so I think that there's just, I'm too old for it. But as far as like, would I love to do something like on an independent basis, like? Somebody from like Amazing Red School in Queens, wanted a talker. I could do that, but like I tried to do commentary and I was really bad at it. I blew the big surprise.
Oh no!
So I can't imagine and I got my fucking head chewed off by some goddamn juggalo for us because it was supposed to be like Sabu was supposed to be the prize, and I was making a joke about Sandman drinking at the bar, but I said Sabu. Then everyone thought it was so stupid. They got pissed off. This was like Joey Janela's thing. But I basically I essentially like literally ran out of the arena because I thought the guys were going to beat my ass because I fucked it up so bad. But I just don't think, I don't know, man. I just don't think that's in the cards for me. But I would love to do it, on a smaller scale. Like I would love to do in wrestling, when like a dentist does stand-up or something on the side. Like, I would love to do that just for fun. Like something where...
Britt Baker is a wrestler who does dentistry on the side or a dentist who does wrestling on the side. So, yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be like the guy who's like a real estate agent who also is in an improv troupe, like the side one,
Conrad's right. Conrad's in the mortgage business and running a big kind of wrestling conglomerate.
That guy's built an empire, huh?
Yeah. So and so and before I forget, not to get my own shit in, but because I'll forget. When we do the wraparound, me and my producer Grant, I'll forget that it came up in the interview. But you mentioned Sabu. I'm narrating his audio book for his book. Going to be working on that this summer, maybe this fall. So in the next few weeks and next few months.
Well, as long as you don't narrate his Twitter, you'll be fine.
I popped for, and then you mentioned Juggalos and ICP spoke with them a few days ago, And looks like we're going to hopefully be meeting up on the phone and having them here on this show on the Eargasm in the next few weeks.
It's so weird. I used to write for Fuse, and I remember one day, when I was in a cubicle just writing promos and ads for them, and then just segment ideas. I wrote for this short-lived show where the hosts were Amy Schumer and Mark Hoppus from Blink-182. And it kind of went away. But one day, like in the office, it was like ICP just showed up to hang out. It was so weird. Like we're trying to do like office stuff, and then these guys who, look buzzed as shit are just like stumbling around, bumping into like Dilbert mugs and cat calendars. Felt like a weird David Lynch movie or something.
Have you ever been to a gathering?
No, I haven't. I would love to do stand up there just because there's a phenomenal comic, Joe DeRosa. He does a story about doing. She's friendly. He does a story about bombing in front of the Juggalos, and they basically chase him out of the festival. So, like, I think I would do fine there. I love that. I saw that documentary about the Gathering. My problem is I just hate their music. That would be the big problem for me. Is that
I'm a big mark for them going back to like 97. And then while I was in ECW, they sent me a care package. One day in the mail, I got like a box from them with shirts.
Look, we all have our weird music tastes as other people. I mean, I'm a huge Meatloaf fan, We all have our one guy that's kind of like some people hate on, so. But yeah, I would definitely do the stand-up show there just for the story,
So when did you start doing stand-up?
Right after college. I was 22. I mean, I did it once in high school, and I did it once in college. But for real, it wasn't until I was 22. I kind of had a sketch comedy troupe in high school, but we never performed really. And, I don't think any of us were really any good. So,
did you go to college by home, or did you go away for school?
No, I went to Indiana. I actually went for acting. I was like,
oh, wow,
serious into acting and playwriting. I went to the same school, Rami Malek, who won the Oscar.
Oh, wow.
I was in his program and shit like that. A little older than me, but he used to like read for my plays and stuff like that. And so, I was an actor and a writer. So I thought to myself, this is the best. The thing about being a comic is, you can always get up. You can't always get up if you're a wrestler. You still, even if you're not getting paid, you need a ring. You need something to perform in. You need I imagine you need a medic there. I'm sure not every show has that, but you should have that, and a ref. And with comedy, you can just, even if I have nothing going on, I can go into the city and do an open mic right now, and that always was attractive to me, where there's always something to do if you're a stand-up. But this is also I promise you the most boring thing for your listeners to hear about my comedy process. So we should talk wrestling.
You know what? I don't think that's true. We've had Taylor Williamson on. We've had K. Trevor Wilson on. We have comedians on, and I think a lot of people are into it. I think. But so you've been doing it then for 17 years, give or take?
Yeah, I quit for a year, and I mean, I guess people count COVID, so I guess you could say 16 really, but. I mean, 17. I mean, I started for real, in 2006. So, yeah, it's a crazy business, man. I feel like, in this business, either blow up 5 years in or 20 years in. It's like there's no, even they always say like the overnight stories, like, oh, Ray Romano's an overnight success story, and it's like, well, he was doing stand up for about 9 years or 11 years, before something happened. So. And luckily, you don't have to be. Well, now you do. But when I started, you didn't have to be hot. Now it seems like a lot. It seems like I think that the entertainment realized that women are just as shallow as men because we just have like male models and shit doing comedies now and selling out theaters. So whatever. But yes, so it's like it's a fun. It's a really fun thing to do. That's also horrible.
You've done a few movies.
I'm sorry, what?
You've done a few movies.
I've only done one movie, and it was like kind of a direct DVD. I've done a lot of TV. I've done a lot of TV. I've been on like over 20 TV shows, and I've written for a lot of TV. But I have not done the movie thing yet. I've gotten close a couple times. This is actually a funny story. This movie that I worked on for a while. This movie that I worked on for a while. Like I first finished in 2016, 2017. We thought we had at least somebody to like kind of like give us a holding deal or like a, you know, just option it. And they're supposed to get it back next week. And that company was the Weinstein Company. So they're not around anymore.
They are not. No. My wife used to work there. That's one of her past employers. And yes, they are not around anymore.
Well, thank God she got out okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, so no, I haven't been fortunate enough. My dad actually has a movie coming out. My dad's a playwright. He has a movie with Anthony Hopkins coming out later this year. But no, I have not. I am not in that position. So I would like to be at some point. It seems a lot more fun to do you know, one movie a year and make just as much as you would writing on a 22 episode season of a show.
Do you have a SAG or are you non-union?
I'm SAG, yeah. You have to be SAG when you do those TV shows. So I'm SAG and WGA, so I'm supposed to be on two different lines right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've kind of just been putting my work into a new podcast, and you know, I have another project that still before the deadline. That's actually, you know, Animation Guild. It's not Writers Guild, so I'm working on that. But we've got a new special coming out, and that's the great thing about stand-up. It's like when the world of entertainment stops, you know, there'll never be a, you know, thank God for the writers union and like my, you know, they supply medical benefits for a couple of years straight. But you know, there'll never be a stand-up union, just like there'll never be a wrestling union.
Right.
They'll just keep going while the other art forms, you know, have executives and artists that are at each other's throats. So, you know, wrestling and comedy, business model-wise, are very similar. And I find that both wrestlers and comedians are closer to pirates than we are artists.
So we talked about Conrad, and that what you're saying now makes a great segue, right? Because we want to talk about wrestling, not comedy. So I'll meet you halfway. You, ad-free shows, you're the Wrestle Roasts guy, right? Ric Flair, everything. Why don't you please, in case people listening don't know, or in case they do know, talk about your experience there with being the Wrestle Roast guy and all of the fun that you've had in wrestling?
I mean, my favorite thing is just to work with my co-hosts. I get to work with Scott Chaplin and Robert Karpolis, who's the guy behind WWE Creative, and Mike Lawrence, who left the show, but, you know, comes back a lot. And, you know, I'm just friends with these guys, you know, so it's just fun to, like, you know, it used to be like, ooh, I'll get to meet all these wrestlers, and I have met some wrestlers. But now I just look forward to talking about wrestling with my friends, and we try to have fun with it because, you know, we do the roasts, but we also, you know, talk current product. And yeah, man, it's a good time. Check it out. There's a ton of roasts already up there, so please check it out.
For sure. Dan, what does wrestling need more of?
Man, I did say the promos, right? I mean, I think that this Usos storyline is a good example of what it needs more of. I think that the Usos bloodline story has been fantastic. So I think that, you know, having more of that in wrestling, you know, I don't think we need, you know, another 6-star match. I think we need better stories. And some of that is better promos. My dog's going nuts. I apologize. So I think the storytelling, you know, that's the thing that's been sorely needed. And as you look at the ratings, that's exactly what the doctor ordered. You know, like WWE is doing better. At least is, you know, the best it probably has been since the Attitude Era. I don't think it's reached the edge, even though there are plenty of people that will argue, you know, that it's doing. There's some people that say it's doing better than the Attitude Era because, you know, it's back in. I don't think that's the case. But I think the reason that it's turned around is, you know, you have on top you've had a really complex story that's been going on for years, and I think they need to bring more of it. You know. I look at both companies, right? AEW, which for sure has the better in-ring wrestling, you know, and arguably even the better roster. Although I think the rosters are pretty equal. But, you know, I think that the big difference between them is, you know, one company is better at telling stories right now. And I think if you looked at, like, you know, we talked about this on the show, the Elite and Hangman Page, that was supposed to be such a huge moment built up over, like, 2 years when they finally get together, right? And then it happened, and it was a nice pop, but, you know, it didn't feel like Sammy turning on Roman. It didn't feel like everything Jay's doing right now. And, you know, I think that a lot of it is just taking time with the stories and, you know, like, you know, people don't like, you know, we don't need to have swerves. I mean, that's how Vince Russo kind of killed WCW, right? So, you know, what you need is you just need a long-term storyline that people are invested in. But I think they need more of that, and, you know, I wish I could see more of that in AEW. I mean, it seems like this Adam Cole MJF stuff is more interesting, which is, you know, by the way, you know, kind of the same story that's always worked in wrestling. The two people that, you know, the unlikely buddy cop combo. So, you know, whether it's Kane and Daniel Bryan or Booker T and Goldust, you know, it's just for whatever reason it works. So, yeah, I mean, I think that you need to focus on stories. I think you need to get people who are storytellers in your company. There was such like this antipathy towards writers in WWE, but, you know, I mean, Vince is controlling it, so he would have the writers kind of fill in the blanks of a drawing that he had already sketched. So I don't think it was really totally fair. I think that there's been too much blame on the writers, especially, you know, in WWE, you know, like where they really don't have that much power, you know. Like if you, like people like, you know, Ryan Gerwitz, I always screw that name up, or Ed Koskey, they're the exception, not the rule. And I think that the way, you know, what we have now with Tony, who's basically, you know, in charge of all creative with, you know, QT Marshall, who has kind of like limited experience, right? I think you're going to, you know, eventually you're going to flame out. And I think Tony was, you know, the Punk and MJF story. I don't know how much that was him, but the beginning with Kenny Omega and the belt stuff, the inner circle stuff up top, he was telling some really good stories. I think he has a creative mind, but I think he's just kind of burned out right now. And, you know, he answers that with swerves and tournaments. And, you know, of course, you know, they're doing really well in England, but, you know, I think that you're going to see, I think the reason they're doing so well in England is because of the, you know, the COVID years they had, they were phenomenal. And it's the first time they've been there. I think to keep going, you really need to invest in stories. You need to get people, you know, you need to get storytellers in there. You need to get Dusty Rhodes in there. You need to get people who understand angles, understand how to, you know, when to pull the trigger on something and when not to. You just need to, you know, they say this in wrestling all the time, right? And they say this in comedy too. Like, you know, like when you're in the ring, you probably heard this a million times. Just, you know, however slow you think you're going, go slower.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with stand-up. You know, you don't want to, you know, have so much energy, you're running through jokes and stuff like that. But I think the same thing can be applied to storylines, man. I think, you know, like, look, it's one thing if, like, the storyline friggin' stinks, then you want to bail on it, you know? And there's certain examples of that, like Katie Vick, and there's, you know, certainly there was a time where they were trying to make, like, Dark Order, like, a real heel, like, badass faction in the beginning. You know, there's certain things that you do have to, you know, you see it on screen and you're like, nope, we made a mistake. And you kind of, you know, go back to the drawing board. But I think if something's working or if there's a chance that something will work, you take it slowly, man. I mean, and you have some patience with it. Look at Judgment Day in WWE. When they came in with Edge, this stable sucked. When it was just Edge and Damian Priest and then Rhea for a little bit, it sucked. And then when they got Finn in and they got, you know, Dom in and you had the interplay with Rhea, it's become really fun, you know, must-see TV. But, you know, that's because they were patient with it, man. I mean, like, I think, like, Swerve is an amazing talent in AEW. He's been in 3 factions, you know, the last, like, year. So I think you just need to kind of trust the process, get slower with everything you're doing, and, you know, I mean, I think probably the most important thing is you can't have the lunatics run the asylum, right? So it's like, for all the criticisms you have with Vince, you know, and, you know, and I don't think Vince McMahon could ever fight, but he stood up to guys, you know, and I think you kind of need that too. So it's the combo of, like, you know, taking your time and then also being able to stand up to guys. And, you know, Pritchard says this on his podcast, so I don't know, I haven't listened to it lately, but, you know, it's like, well, where is this? Yeah, but what's next, you know? And if you don't have the answer of what's next, then you're throwing kind of a bunch of shit at the wall, I mean,
yeah, it is like chess. Back in the day, it used to be booked at least 13 weeks in advance. I mean, yeah, you have to know where you're going. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to go where you're going. But, I think that a lot of that is, unfortunately, a lot of that is Tony's ego, like he's not going to let, somebody else take the reins. And, I get it. You're a billionaire's kid. If you've never had a job at, fucking Sam Goody or at a grocery store, you're going to think that, you don't need help. But I think they need help right now. And it's a shame because they have so much talent over there, on screen and off screen. So I think what you need is stories. That was a long-winded way to say stories.
Oh, that was a great answer. And now get ready for a long-winded 180-degree antithetical answer, because now we're going to examine the other side of the coin. What do you think wrestling needs less of?
I think it probably needs less matches right now. I think it probably needs less matches. I think it needs more, like I said before, story building and promos. I just don't think people care about matches. I mean, I love a great match, it's like you watch Forbidden Door, right? And Ospreay and Omega is a classic. It's a classic match. But I don't remember any of the other matches on the card. So why not for those other matches on the card, you tell like stories, So I think if I had to say, I would say that that's what it needs to look. Part of it is just, and this is a WWE problem too. They sign these massive TV deals, and you have to create content for them, whether they're good or bad. So there's, it's impossible, dude. It's like I've written on shows with like 12-person staff. I'm writing like a half hour a week, and these are good writers. You're asking these people to put together like, let's think, I don't even know if main event's around anymore, but let's say you don't say main event, right? So it's like in WWE, you're asking people to, put together at least 7 hours of content a week between NXT and Raw and SmackDown, not counting pay-per-views, not counting all the other, side projects they have. So you have that. And then, I mean, AEW, it's like, it's become the same thing, where you're trying to, produce like 7 hours of content a week to somebody who's new at storytelling. So I think there's just the biggest problem with wrestling is there's just too fucking much of it, and I'm a diehard, and if I'm saying that, I can't imagine what the casual fan is saying. I think that there was something too in the Attitude Era, when Steve Austin, was about to get, has the sword of Damocles hanging over his head, and we wonder what's going to happen next week, and having to wait that week and build that anticipation up. I think that helps a lot. But, we're in a capitalist society. People want to make as much money as possible. But it's like, who are the people? But, like if you're seeing less, conversely, it's like you're more special. It's like whenever Cena and Brock, come on screen, they're more special because you don't see them every week. Same thing with Roman. It's like Roman's become a bigger draw with less of a schedule. And like this is kind of hypocritical because like I think people get annoyed, like, oh, well, AEW, like people disappear. Well, they disappear though after like having a match, like, like then the next week they won't even be brought up. I'm not saying like don't bring Brock up or don't bring Roman up because Roman is still like, Hulk Hogan was still a focal part of WWF lore when he wasn't on TV all the time. So it's like you don't want to like lose track of who these guys are. I don't, but I think that if you, like this is a perfect. My friend, I worked with this guy Akiva Shavir, who's in Lonely Island, and a very talented guy, and he was editing. He did that movie. He did a movie with Vince Vaughn, and Vince Vaughn said this to him in the edit. He said, a little of me goes a long way, and I think that's kind of like a perfect analogy for wrestling. It's like if we don't want to, you can easily expose somebody in this business. It's very easy to expose somebody in this business.
Less is more. Done right?
Less is more. I mean, we even talk about,
Would you go so far to say Raw could be 2 hours, SmackDown could be 1 hour, Rampage, Dynamite, like, would you go so
Rampage
far
should be off TV
the
now.
shows are a bit too long, or are there just too many shows from like if you count NXT, you've got 3 WWE shows a week. You've got 3 from AEW. Is it too many shows, too many nights, or is it? That
I think that if WWE had 3 or 4 hours a week, and AEW had 2 hours a week, they would both be more popular than they are now. But they wouldn't be making the same money because, we have these cables rights and streaming deals. And, that whole thing is content. And the thing about wrestling is, as TV has gone one direction where it's like, the best show on TV, Succession, it's only 10 episodes a season. And it's usually a season every 2 years, right? And then they stop at 4. Like TV is kind of like must-see TV is getting smaller, and like what's filling the void is sports and wrestling and reality TV and things that like, a lot of people would consider, I guess, like lower art forms just because, they fill up time. So, I think sometimes the business model of wrestling and the short-term money gets in the way of the long-term money and popularity.
Interesting.
But how do you tell if somebody's offering you $600 million a year? How do you tell them no? We won't have a new. Like if you're Tony Khan and the head of programming is like, let's have. I remember sometimes it's like sometimes things aren't easy. I remember only one job. I had a writing job. I won't say which job it is, but they wanted to promote me, and I was like, I kind of just want to stay at this level and make less money so I can focus on some other projects. And they basically told me where it's like, well, we're going to promote you or you're fired.
Yeah.
So like I took the promotion because I wanted, I had to get paid. Yeah. So I think it's dude, it's super complicated, right? And I don't think there's like a great answer either way. So, yeah. I feel like I'm being way too long-winded on this stuff.
No, not at all. So, and now I've got another one for you, right? Let's make this the third one. Let's make it a trifecta. So we talked about what wrestling needs more of, what wrestling might need less of. We've also, though, talked about the past, and we've done comparisons, and we've talked about the Attitude Era, but we've also talked about, you've talked about Cena, you've talked about Brock. So you've talked about guys that were kind of starting to come up about 20 years ago, started to really get hot, were big 15 years ago and are still kind of on the scene. So let's kind of look at that kind of time frame, 15 or 20 years ago, just arbitrarily. And this is a question that I phrase and that I pose to a few of my guests. 17 years, right, for want of a better number, to make it a nice round number when you add it to 2023. 17 years have gone by, and it is now the summer of 2040. Describe to me the wrestling landscape.
Well, we're in we are in a new, as much as I was bitching about stuff, like, it's way better than it was in 2007, right, in 2009, because, you would always want to watch Ring of Honor and stuff like that, and you just couldn't watch it, So now it's like, it's very accessible, and I think that's great. It's just, there's something for everybody now, if you want stories, you watch the Bloodline, and if you want, a lot of really great wrestling, you watch AEW and New Japan, and for sure, WWE has great matches too, but if you're like, kind of a match slut, you go there, but I think the landscape is just, there's just a lot more of it now, and there's more money to be made from it. And I think some of that isn't even popularity. I think that the wrestling business model is way cheaper than a lot of other entertainment models. So a lot of these networks are like, well, shit, it's that kind of reality TV. We can produce this thing for, a tenth of the amount of money we would pay for Seinfeld. Why not? Right. So there's a lot more opportunities that way. I do think that there is some, I do think that it's like back, 20 years ago, there still was that feeling of, I want to get into wrestling and I want to make as much money as possible. And now I do think that there's a lot more marks in the business, than there used to be. It's like, oh, I just want a spot, when it really is about drawing money and making money. I say this and, I'm begging people to come to my fucking shows of the Mohegan Sun this goddamn weekend. But, it's changed a lot, man. It's just, everything's accessible.
not just the present versus the past, but if I were to hold your feet to the fire and ask you for even one, your best, most exact prediction as to what wrestling will be like 5, 10, 15 years from now, that's different.
I would, first off, I would never trust me, because I could never predict where comedy is going 5 years from now, and that's my primary source of income. This is just, like me doing a wrestling podcast and roasting these wrestlers. That's just like, that's kind of like a side thing, that I enjoy more than it actually makes me money. So I could not tell you where wrestling is going to be in 5 years from now. I mean, I think all the promotions
will they take your advice? Will there be more of it? Will there be just as much, or will there be less of it? Content?
No, it's all market, right? So it's like, if they're offering them money for more content, people will keep making more content. Like there's a reason that John Cena had a new T-shirt every week. If somebody's going to buy it, they're going to keep creating them. So it really depends on the market. Now, if everything kind of craters, which I kind of don't see happening again, because, like I'm much more nervous about the scripted industry than I am, even though wrestling is scripted, than the quote unquote unscripted, entertainment. So, who knows, man? I mean, every business goes from, we could see in, 5 years from now, we see a huge dip, and then 15 years from now, it starts taking off again. And you never, like, a lot of it too, it's like, the Rock and Austin, right? Like, without them, are the late 90s as hot? I don't think they are. And in the 2000s, I think wrestling would have sunk to even less relevance, in the late 2000s if it wasn't for John Cena. I think he kind of kept it afloat when it was less relevant. So I think it depends on who comes. I mean, there will always be a market for wrestling, man. There will always be people who want, to watch wrestling. And as one of these art forms, it's not going away. I think that, like, if you were to tell me in 50 years, is WWE going to be around or Saturday Night Live? If one of those went away, I would say Saturday Night Live is going to go away, because it makes less money and it's more expensive to make. I mean, less and less people watch it, right? Which is, I guess you could say that about everything. So I don't think wrestling is ever going to go away. I think it'll just kind of fluctuate. Look, there's always the chance of another monopoly. There's always a chance of, the Cons buying WWE or WWE buying AEW if Tony gets sick of doing it. I think that could be a prediction that, we could see these guys get, I don't, it seems like the SEC and any like antitrust legislation wants to stay away from wrestling as much as possible, or else Vince wouldn't have risen the way he rose. So, I think that if there's one thing that could happen, you could see more of, kind of what's happening to the streamers now. You could see, some of these promotions, like Tony bought Ring of Honor, right? Let's say WWE buys MLW, which isn't going to happen. They're in a lawsuit right now. But I could see that happen. I mean, I could see wrestling being consolidated, which is terrible for the wrestling business, because, the best thing that AEW, it's why, like, even if, like, you're Jim Cornette, like, you gotta love the fact there's another option, and that these guys can get paid a little more, because that wasn't happening for a while. And, they were across the board underpaid. And it seems like guys are starting to at least get paid out now. So that's great. So I hope that doesn't happen. I hope there's still two really strong companies, because if you don't have two strong companies, then you have the UFC, right? Where it's like, what, are you going to go to Bellator? I mean, the only people who go to Bellator is when, you're not good enough for the UFC, or when you're an old UFC fighter and Dana doesn't want to pay you as much anymore. So I hope that there's more companies working together, but I mean, there's less companies working together. I mean, I think wrestling war is good for the business and good for the wrestlers. But I could see, you look at the history of if you look at the history of like just American capitalism the last 50 years, it does seem like, bigger businesses swell up smaller ones and become bigger. And that happened with WWE. And now they have, finally there's another option, but it could totally happen again. So that would be my dire prediction. My good prediction is, these both of these places, AEW and WWE, they kind of become institutions. They don't fall apart. Yeah, I mean, it just seems like wrestling is always going to be here to stay, man. Because, you know, I don't know if you just saw the American Gladiators documentary, but there's been like Battle Bowl, American Gladiators. What was the one where it was the Robot Wars or Rock'em, whatever, Beast Wars? Like it seems like every sports entertainment entity outside of wrestling has fucking had a shelf life and kind of failed eventually. You know, even if they had a hot couple of years, and it's just wrestling has always stuck around. You can't kill it. You know, it's been around, you know, for over 100 years, right? So I think it will always be there, and it'll fluctuate up and down. But I don't think anyone's ever gonna, you know, this whole thing about like killing the wrestling business. I really don't think that's possible. I think there's always going to be some perverse enjoyment from seeing a good guy and a bad guy fight in a scripted way, and I think that'll just get more popular. You know, like in the beginning, I think UFC was kicking its ass. Well, it wasn't in the beginning, but UFC was then eventually kicking its ass in the pay-per-view model. But I think ultimately UFC helps wrestling in the long term because, you know, with UFC, if you watch a UFC card, I'm a big UFC fan. You know, maybe there's one great match and one really good, you know, match a night. But, you know, there's a lot of squashes. There's a lot of guys who, you know, end up not having chemistry and nobody takes any hits. And, you know, there will always be a market for, all right, I'll at least be able to see something exciting if I come to a wrestling event when it comes to combat sports. Did I answer your question on that?
Yeah, man, for sure. That's a great answer. Well, dude, I mean, thank you so much for being here on the Eargasm. But before I let you go, you know, I was talking about your schedule includes the Funny Bone, the Cellar Door, and a bunch of places that are in.
Yeah, I'm at. When is this coming out?
This will be released within the next week or so. So late.
Okay. All right. So next week I'm going to be opening for Dan Soder, so you can check out my times there. I think I'm going to be opening for Alana Glazer again in August. I'll be also doing the Cellar Door and the Bright Box Theater, and I'm doing some other rooms upstate New York, and I got the Funny Bone in September. I got a new podcast coming out, actually, probably by the time this releases, called The It Couple, where me and my wife review horror movies, and we have some great guests on it, including Dolph Ziggler. He's going to be, I think he's like our 6th episode or 7th episode, I forget. So yeah, that'll be a blast. You know, I am working on a show with Dan Soder and Stone Cold Steve Austin. I hope that sees the light of day. I'm working on it for Peacock. We'll see if it does. And I will have a special coming out sometime in the fall. I'm hoping it's around October, but it could be November.
Amazing. Travel and adventure show, man. That retirement show, he's amazing on that. That's appointment TV for us. We love him.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Austin, it's like, you know, I consider him like, you know, like fucking Tony Soprano or Lucille Ball. You know, it's like he's an icon in TV, not just wrestling. Mm-hmm. So definitely check that out. And I got Wrestle Roasts on ad-free shows. And we have a huge backlog, and our Patreon has a ton of stuff. So yeah, check us out, man. And, you know, keep watching wrestling, brother.
There we go. Dan St. Germain, thank you so much for being on the Eargasm with us, and we will have more 69-minute Eargasm after this. I give you guys an eargasm all the time. Not that I'm tired of it, but what I want to give to you guys this time is some head. And what I mean by that is not just that I want you to have your mouth smiling and laughs coming out and things running through your mind, but I want to literally give you head. And not just in a funny way, but it is in the form of comedy, and it does come from head. And allow me to explain. He worked 10 years as an equipment manager in pro hockey, 7 years with Pittsburgh Penguins top affiliate, and 3 years with the Dallas Stars. He's been Derek Holland's personal assistant for 7 years now. He's been doing stand-up for 5 years. He's one of the best on the scene right now. He's originally from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and he did some independent wrestling for 4 years. I wonder if that's something he might or might not want to talk about. But he trained under Tom Rumsby and the great legendary Samu, my man. Don't believe in marriage because he doesn't. He's going to tell you why. He's an officially licensed agent. He's not just head. He's a one-man head shop. An officially licensed agent through the state of Oklahoma to sell legally, if that's what floats your boat, and only drinks Pepsi. He doesn't even know the last time he had a cup of water. Ladies and gentlemen, this and he inside your mind to feed your soul and rock your skull is the one only Ted Richards. What's going on, my man?
Wow. What an entrance. I shouldn't expect anything less from you, but I believe I need a cigarette after that. Wow.
Yeah, what Hed's not telling you is it's lazy Sunday around here when we're taping this, and unfortunately it took me to. It's funny because I don't know if this is going to air in the show before or after the history segment, but John Pantosi, our historian, I put him over in this week's episode for being a one-taker, and then I jinxed I had a couple of take twos on this, and so that's what Head politely isn't talking about as he puts it over. But yeah, I had to do a second take on this, and I got hot at myself for it. But Head, you understand, man? Dude, listen, dude, you're catching fire. I see you more and more on social media. I see the shows getting bigger and better. I see you honing and perfecting the craft, and I see you moving up in the world. Tell everybody what they need to know, but do it in your way.
Well, first of all, I'm okay with 2, 3, 4 takes. I'm a ginger, so if you want another round after round, I'm here for it. You know, it is the Eargasm podcast, so let's get after it. But what more can I say after that intro, man? I'm just blessed to be able to do stand-up comedy. I don't know. There's not a day that goes by I don't pinch myself, and I'm like, is this real life that I get paid to stand up in front of people and just be an idiot? And the more stupid you are, the more work you get, and I just freaking love it, man.
You've been doing it for 5 years.
Yeah, about 5 years now. First 3 years, like anything, you got to earn your way. I look at it, like I said, I worked in sports, so it's like you start in T-ball, and I got to work my way up. But the last 2 years, it's been unbelievable for me. It actually started back in 2021. I was in Detroit for the summer, and just one of those things, man. Once you get your first gig, people see you working, and they're like, oh, you're working this club, I want you at this club. Oh, come over to this club now. And it's just kind of been like I don't know the word. I didn't finish high school. Sorry, I don't know all the proper termination here. But it's just crazy. Like one night with stand-up, though, I was doing a show in Detroit, Michigan. And after the show, this guy comes up to me, and he was just like, hey, man, what are you doing tomorrow during the day? We're filming this movie, and we need someone to play a security role. And I was like, well, I planned on sleeping until 2 o'clock, but it looks like I'm getting up early now. So that's how I got to get into my first ever movie. And then, like I said, it's just one thing after another these last 2 years where there's times just pinching myself, is this real? Is it not? And you always feel it was after the 2021 year. I worked my most weekend. I did 34 weekends of work. And what people, if you don't know stand-up comedy, as a comic, you want to work a whole weekend as a club. It's a lot better to do it that way than getting these one-off bar shows. It's not as fun. People aren't there for comedy. So like I said, I had 34 weekends done that year in 2021, which is unbelievable for being my fourth year in the comedy. And I was literally sitting at home. It was like New Year's Eve weekend. And I'm just sitting there gloating, happy, like, well, yeah, like what a good year. And I actually got humbled by the internet because I pulled up my phone and there's this video of The Rock. And he was doing this interview and he said, it's nice to be important, but it's even more important to be nice.
At dinner on Friday, I just used that quote with a buddy of mine, Jim Tiso, great friend from Boston area. Johnny Rods always said that. And I used to visit Professor Elliot Marin, who was kind of, a helper-outer with the WWF, 70s, 80s, and kind of like, did security and this and that, timekeeper if they needed one, drove the TV tapes from Allentown and Hamburg to WOR Channel 9 at the time. And so I used to go visit him. He was older and he was ill, and I would visit him here in Brooklyn. And he would tell me quite a few things about fellow Brooklynite to us both, me and him, Johnny Rods. And one of the things he told me that Johnny Rods would always say is that it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
And that's very true. And like I said, that really resonated with, because everyone's always worried that the government's watching you. Well, what if they're watching for good reasons? So it was that night I realized, I was like, you know what? I don't want to make this comedy about me. I want to do like helping, giving back to other people. So if people don't know, after shows, a lot of comedians sell merchandise, T-shirts, accessories, whatever. Usually it helps like travel to gigs and stuff. But I want to take that money in 2022 and donate it to, I live in Dallas, Texas. So I want to raise money for a local charity called the 60 Feet 6 Foundation, in which they help children, families with children fighting cancer. So I set a goal because as an opener, I don't always get to sell merch because some of the headliners want all the money for themselves. But I set a reasonable goal of $1,000 for 2022, and I actually ended up raising over $2,000 that year. So I was pretty proud of myself for that, and that meant more to me that following year than any gig I worked.
Good for anybody who benefits from that, man. But and importantly, I mean, you setting the wheels in motion on it. Good for you, man.
But so that's kind of where I'm at on the comedy stuff. A little bit. I did used to work in hockey. And a real quick story for you guys. I've only ever had one job interview in my life. Because as we get older, we realize a lot of jobs aren't about what you know, it's who you know. And that's how I got a lot of work growing up, because of the people I knew and who I was around. But my only job interview I ever did was I was getting interviewed for the Dallas Stars hockey team. I just finished my 7th year in the minor leagues, and they actually, I don't know if you know this about pro sports, they love to waste money. So even though the team was in Dallas, they flew me out to Las Vegas, Nevada, and put me up in a hotel for 4 nights for the interview. So I brought 6 of my closest buddies with me, because you can't do Vegas alone. It's dangerous, right? So I remember the first night we got in, I was like, guys, listen, I need to be back by midnight. You guys go out, have fun. I just got to be in bed by midnight because I got to be up ready to go at 8 a.m. Like, I'm chasing my dreams. Would you know, Joel, that first night I never looked at my watch until 3:30 in the morning. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to need another hour because I need to see what she's about to do with those ping pong balls. It was my first time in Vegas. I never experienced the ping pong show. It was unbelievable. Now that I'm looking back, though, it's kind of a little depressing because she was able to launch those things further than I could throw a baseball. But I never got back to my room that night. I remember I wanted to get back by midnight. I never walked in my hotel room door until 6:57 in the morning. But what do you do? Like, when you're partying all night, you can't go to sleep for 30 minutes. You'll never wake up. So I just made myself a nice bubble bath. I didn't even know you're supposed to get in it before you finish filling it. But needless to say,
doing in the serious.
Yeah, I didn't get my security deposit back that trip. Oh, well. But I made it to the interview on time at 8 a.m. Thank God. But the craziest thing, the guy who was interviewing me showed up just as drunk as I was.
Oh, nice.
Exactly. That's what I said. And I thought everything in the interview was going really well until about halfway through. He got a phone call that as he's pulling the phone out of his pocket, a bag of, let's say, baby powder fell on the table. And let's just say my job interview lasted 3.5 days.
Oh, gosh.
I've never been so excited to start a job before in my life, man. Like, there's no way I could physically get fired from this job, right? How do you get fired from any job? You get caught doing drugs. But what happens when the boss is in on it? It makes for a much better Monday morning. I can promise you that.
If you're serious, say no more. Talking about jobs, though, and work ethic and discipline and everything, this is, I think, because I don't know when you're being serious or not, and I don't care because you're funny as fuck, but, like, did you get fired from a job because you insisted that you needed to go to WrestleMania 32?
Yes. So what had happened, actually, this job I thought I couldn't get fired from, there was a dispute over a playoff bonus. So me being a young, dumb, 24-year-old kid at the time was like, you know what? I'm just going to take the week off from work and go to WrestleMania 32 in Dallas.
Your WrestleMania moment.
It was, and I'll be honest with you, if I had to go back, I'm 34 now. If I had to go back in time and do it all over again, I wouldn't change a goddamn thing.
Good for you.
Because growing up a wrestling fan, man, it's always you got to go to WrestleMania, man. It's the greatest, no matter which one you like, it's the greatest spectacle, right? It's where they blow the big Super Bowl moment. And for me, I worked in Wilkes-Barre all those years, so we had those New York City WrestleManias, but working in the minor leagues, it's a weekend league, so you're always playing, so I never got to go. So the fact that I was living in the city it was at, I was like, I got to get there somehow, some way. And yeah, it might have cost me my dream life, but it opened way more doors for me.
Yeah, hey, listen, man, do you know what I mean? Like, regret doing it, don't regret not doing it, you know what I mean? I'm glad you had a good time.
Mm-hmm. And look, instead of having to take care of people, hanging sweaty jock straps all the time, I'm living a much better life now.
Yeah, man, good for you. Good. No, dude, I'm Dude, we linked up just this year, like a few months ago. Like, we don't know each other very long, but we're kindred spirits, and it's always good to know somebody who's charitable and who likes to who's on the I'm trying to get further and further into philanthropy and social media philanthropy, and just somebody who's looking out for others and somebody who understands I like your life mindset, basically. Like, every time we talk, you make me smile, and it's just,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, we're not old friends, but, we're already good friends. I'm better off for it.
And that's what I think really brought us together. I seen you were doing something charitable. And like I said, I'm in a position now where I'm able to help if I could. Like I said, I work in pro sports, so I know a lot of athletes who are always willing to sign stuff to help raise more money for these causes. That's why I was like, hey, if you ever need something, I could send you up a few things to help out, because, like I said, at the end of the day, that's what makes me happy now, being able to help other people. It's not. Remember, when you're growing up as a kid, it's all about me, 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 me. Now, it's, no, what can I do to help you? That's what's going to make your legacy live longer.
That's so true. I believe that, too. And in moments when I doubt it, it's always good to have people.
Because I was egotistic as a kid growing up, too, like playing sports, man. I wanted a number that no one else had. So when you seen it, you thought of me. So I actually wore number 96, because at the time there was nobody famous, right? Like, I started a higher number and worked my way down. 99 was Gretzky. Then we had Jesse Armstrong at 98. 97 was Jeremy Roenick, and nobody was 96. So I was like, that's my number. That's Head Richards' number. And then a couple months later, frickin' Mighty Ducks came out, and goddamn Charlie Conway had my number on.
That's so awesome. Dude, so for people who want to know where you're going to be at, for people who want to get to know you, have the pleasure, the privilege like I've had last few months, and for people who want to know where they can find you for stuff like your schedule and stuff like that, just let people know how they can get in touch and stay in touch.
So all my social medias is Ginger Nation 96. For comedy, I'm probably most active on Instagram. I have Twitter, but I usually only read that to keep up to date on sports, because that's your best avenue for that. I also have a Facebook, which is just under Head Richards. But every time I'm doing a show or something, I always post it ahead of time. And I'll tell you what, for the Eargasm listeners only, if you guys are listening to this show, if you see I'm doing a show in your town, send me a message on Instagram. Be like, hey, heard you on Joel's podcast. I want to come to a show. I'll leave you free tickets.
That's unbelievable. That's amazing, dude. Thank you so much.
I just love to get them out, man, because that's what I love about comedy, man. We have a crazy...
I'm going to figure you out one day, because you're so generous, and it just, like, I don't know, it makes me feel good about myself for being your friend, and it makes me kind of want to do better, it makes me want to do more. It kind of drives me, because it's just every time, I've got this auction coming up next week on my Facebook, and we're going to divide the proceeds between St. Jude's, which is most times, more often than not, that's where it goes. And then also Shotzi in WWE, her sister, has a GoFundMe for some medical ailments right now. So it's going to be kind of 50-50 between the two. And when you found out about it, I mean, like you told people, we met through a previous auction and through me doing stuff like this, and you wanting to help out. And for the auction next week, which I hope people go to, facebook.com/MXW Joel Gertner. And just donate. Please buy something. You'll get something of value. I've tried to buy everything. Head has donated a ton of stuff. Derek Holland and other friends of theirs, and Head on their behalf donated a ton of stuff. George Tahinos, wrestling photographer, as usual, has donated. There's still 250 cards from the 270 or so that he sent. So we're going to be auctioning off some of those. I've gone out on eBay and provided some inventory for resale, and I've tried to get everything. I've been really comparison shopping, really, really wisely shopping for stuff that's kind of so low priced that it's affordable to have as inventory. You can go ahead and pay for it, overpay for it. It'll be of value, of worth. You can always resell it, get your money back, but your money that you donate goes today to both of those causes. So everybody kind of wins. But yeah, like you said, Head, that's kind of doing stuff like this is how you and I got linked up. And I thank you so much for everything you've ever done, and for, for your offer for Eargasm listeners. I mean, it's just incredible, man. Like, you knocked my socks off. I never know kind of what to expect from you.
Well, it comes down to just being surrounded by people who do good things, right? Like you said, I work with a guy named Derek Holland who's played pro baseball. He's played for 13 years in the big leagues. But if you ever meet this guy, it's not about what he's done. He uses his platform. There's days we wake up, we go to the children's hospital to see the kids. And it's not, yeah, they're excited to see him because he plays pro baseball. They're just as excited to see me because someone came to spend time with them. Because kids aren't used to this stuff, and it really opens your heart to see that situation. So I'm always trying to do whatever I can to help give them a better life, because there's no reason kids should be going through that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man.
But I do have to thank you, man, because you made my childhood unbelievable. I remember growing up in Wilkes-Barre. We used to go, I don't know if you remember going to the old Kingston Armory there. But me and my brother Teddy would show up 6-7 hours early because it was always general admission, just be out there waiting so we can get front row so we could be as close to you guys as possible. So I want to say thank you, Joel, for everything you've given to me in my life.
No, it's an honor to be. I appreciate it. I don't even know. Hey, I'll take the compliment, man. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. That means a lot.
But with that being said, I do want to challenge you to a sushi eat-off contest next time I'm in New York City.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, let's make that happen, Captain, for sure.
So I think we're in the same mindset on the buffet, because I don't like limiting myself to a few rolls. I like lots of options.
Yeah, for sure, let's get that. Don't threaten me with a good time, man. Absolutely. We'll make that work, yeah. Oh, man. Dude, I think it's the first time I'm hearing your voice, right? We've talked on, like, Facebook and Twitter and stuff, right? So right here
hopefully
on the
it was everything you dreamed about.
Yeah, man, it's gingerific. It's just real nice. It's like red chocolate, red stuff. No, man, yeah. Awesome, dude. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, too, for coming on. I know we just we're putting the finishing touches on this week's episode, and I wanted to get you on it, and thank you for being available. I know you were out earlier today and then had some traffic getting home, so thank you for letting us be part of your Sunday. And now you'll be part of our Tuesday and the rest of this week, and, in perpetuity. We've got you. But you own us, man, head, mind, body, and soul. We are in your lives. We are going to stay emotionally invested with you. Everybody, all of the ways that he said, and then some. Go ahead, Google it if you need to. Head Richards, find this man, and he does so much for so many. Go and do something nice for him. You will appreciate yourself for doing it. He will appreciate it tenfold. I will appreciate it, and you will have a moment to know that you did something for a very, very good man. Ted, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
It's just an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me, man.
You're so welcome. And we'll have more 69-minute eargasm after this. History is best when it's well preserved, and nobody does that like our man, Germain, the archivist, the librarian, the professor, the historian, the one and the only, the inimitable, Mr. John Pantosi.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, let's get right into it. At this date in 1953 in Mexico City, Mexico, Blue Demon defeated the legendary El Santo for the NWA World Welterweight title. 1955 in Birmingham, Alabama, Frank Jarvis defeated Sonny Myers for the NWA Southern Junior Heavyweight title. 1958 in St. Joseph, Missouri, Sonny Myers won a tournament final to win the Central States Heavyweight Championship. 1973 in Honolulu, Ripper Collins and Ed Francis defeated Neff Maiva and Sam Steamboat to win the Hawaiian Tag Team titles. On the same show, Hard Boiled Haggerty defeated a young and upcoming Ric Flair. 1977 in Fort Worth, Texas, Captain USA, who was Big John Studd under the hood, defeated Bruiser Brody for the American Heavyweight title. 1980 in New Orleans, Ken Mantell defeats Wahoo McDaniel to win the Mid-South Louisiana Heavyweight title. 1983 in Fort Worth, Texas, Jimmy Garvin defeats Kevin Von Erich to win the American Heavyweight title. 1993 in Alexandria Bay, New York, Jim Cornette makes his WWF debut. On the same date, same year, Memphis, Tennessee, Jerry Lawler defeats Ken Patera and he wins the CWA International title. 1999 in Buffalo, New York, a big show, pay-per-view, fully loaded. Jeff Jarrett defeats Edge and wins the Intercontinental title. D'Lo Brown defeats Midian and wins the European belt. Big Boss Man defeats Al Snow and wins the Hardcore title. And Farouk and Bradshaw defeat Michael Hayes and the Hardy Boys in a handicap match to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. On this date in 2008, Diamond Dallas Page and rapper Jay-Z come to a settlement in a lawsuit stemming from Jay-Z's use of the Diamond Cutter hand signal. 2011 from Hampton, Virginia. Big show. Monday Night Raw, Rey Mysterio defeats The Miz in a tournament final to win the vacated WWE Championship. This championship was won by CM Punk on what supposedly was his last night with the company at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Now, on the same show in 2011, Rey's title did not last long, as an hour and a half later, John Cena defeated Rey for the championship. When Cena won the belt from Rey, CM Punk's music played. After an 8-day sabbatical, he returned, so both Punk and Cena would be recognized as WWE champion until SummerSlam. To finalize that, Punk would defeat Cena at SummerSlam, only to be defeated by Alberto Del Rio, who cashed in his Money in the Bank. Okay, 2016, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Sasha Banks defeats Charlotte by submission to win the WWE Raw Women's Championship. 2021, New Japan Pro Wrestling in Tokyo. Zack Sabre Jr. and Taichi defeat Naito and Sonata to win the IWGP Tag Team titles. And finally, on this day in 1981, Finn Balor was born. So we wish Finn Balor a happy birthday. And that's it for this day in wrestling history.
Wow. Did you say Finn Balor was born in 1981?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
I didn't realize. I don't think I realized. 42? Wow.
He's been around.
Finn Balor, I did not realize he was quite that close to me in age.
Yeah.
I thought he was a little bit younger, so salute to him. And, yeah, man, wow, happy 42nd birthday, Finn Balor.
Yes.
Of, the milestone, I mean, the show that you talked about in Honolulu, the one that you a young Ric Flair was on. Did you say that was 73?
That was, let's see. Yes, 73.
Wow,
yes.
So 50 years ago today, Nature Boy Ric Flair just recently had his last match. We'll see about that. We were just talking in the ring within the last few months, and now we're talking about him looking back in Honolulu, one of his first appearances there on the island, perhaps maybe his first wrestling appearance in the city of Honolulu, and that was 50 years ago today. May he always be the Nature Boy, always be the, never grow up, and live forever. Woo! John, you're the best, man. People, listen, this is taped, right? We produce a podcast, so we have the option of editing it. So long story short, anything, on the podcast, if need be, can be clipped, cut, edited, deleted, whatever. You are, people always, one of the best compliments I ever got along, my career from the beginning until now is that I'm a one-taker, that there's not a lot of production that needs to be done, that I'm not the kind of person that keeps people there all day. And I just want people to know, because you're such a pro, you put these together, you're always available. But what they also need to know is that what I'm impressed by is that you always we breeze through it from the beginning to the end. And what impresses me is that you always get these done in one take. And I just love it, the passion and everything. I thank you so much, as always.
Thank you, Joel.
You're welcome. And we'll have more 69-minute eargasm after this.